This is our first show of the new year, and I couldn't ask for a better show to start off the new year with. We do about 30 shows a month. This is one of the shows that's so important that we have expanded it to a national show. In the last 16 years, we only have probably done two national shows. This show is so important, and we were so lucky to find one of the top law firms in the country when it comes to tax relief. Let me introduce you and welcome him, especially the first show of the new year, attorney Lance Drury. Good morning, Lance.
How you doing, Steve? It's great to be here.
Listen, I got to tell you, I think we get more letters thanking us for your show than any other show. It's amazing. We get so many letters people would not believe. We probably get about 100 emails a week, but people love the way, first of all, they love your knowledge. And, it's so important, Lance, that when it comes to tax relief, because I have done my due diligence on other companies across the country, you've got to be able to trust the company, the firm that's handling this matter with the IRS. And I love it when you tell people about your Google reviews, but tell people, because I cannot believe all the new people we're adding to your show, listeners each week. Tell people about your firm and what you do.
Well, as you've said, we're a tax resolution firm, which means we deal with various state agencies and the IRS to get people deals on back tax liability. We represent both individuals and businesses. Probably 70% or more of our business is self-employed individuals. Those are the people that get in trouble because the taxes aren't automatically taken out. And the other thing is, Steve, you got to understand, I tell everybody, if you don't hire me, there's 3 rules. Hire an attorney that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the numbers, but guess what? They only dabble in IRS work, and all my attorneys in the various states in which they live, they'll tell you they've seen accountants give horrendous advice to their clients. So hire an attorney that does this every single day, because we spend 50 to 100 hours or more each year just keeping up on this. Number 2, go local. We have offices in Missouri, Tennessee, and Texas where you can go in and meet the attorney in person, although we do telephone consults, Zoom consults all the time. And finally, don't hire one of the big boys. There's a lot of these national companies. They just take your money. They don't do the work, and they never tell you how much it's going to cost you. So we take care of all that up front. Now, sometimes we have to add additional services for people because something comes up that wasn't part of the original engagement letter, but for the services that you need right now, what you're going to have to pay.
Ray, in my looking at firms across the country, there's a lot of law firms that say they specialize in tax relief, but you look at, they also do bankruptcy, they do real estate, they do business. They've got, their shingle is so long. You strictly concentrate on tax relief.
Yes, tax resolution work. And one of the mistakes people make is they'll go to what's called a tax attorney, but those tax attorneys are tax planning, and they're great at what they do, but they only do a little tax resolution work. And some of them just really don't know what they're doing. I'm telling you, everybody thinks this work is simple. They can do it on their own. I've seen so many people screw these things up by trying to do it on their own. We spend 50 to 100 hours a year or more just keeping up on this stuff because it's constantly changing. It's a bureaucracy. It's just, they're not even setting. They're so far behind. The IRS is so screwed up now. Steve, the only thing is screwed up is the IRS is the Postal Service. But anyway, It's the new reality, and we got to deal with it. And everything is taking forever. And of course, people don't want the IRS to come after them, so they're glad that they're not funded properly. But guess what? When they have a problem, that problem's not going to get resolved overnight because they don't have enough people to take care of your problem. So everything is taking so much longer, but that's just how it is.
I haven't even shared this with you yet, but because we get so many letters, I'm going to start doing the letter of the month. And we're going to do it on, you also do a Missouri, Tennessee show. You do a Texas show with us. But for our national show, and I got to tell you, Lance, this one almost brought me to tears. This is from Lucy in Fort Lauderdale. She said, I have listened to your show 3 times now, and I really trust you. My problem is my husband is behind on his taxes with the IRS. It has really hurt our marriage. I'm sure, Ray, I'm sure, Lance, you've heard this before. And he is like pulling teeth. He thinks it's going to go away. I know better. How do I convince him to call you and sit down with him? That's a good one. I thought that was a good one.
Well, here's the deal. I tell everybody most tax attorneys talk numbers. I talk financial freedom. And I've seen people who come to me, they don't hire me right away. 2 months later, 3 months later, their bank account is wiped out. 90% of their take home pay is taken. 100% of their 1099s or their bank account is wiped out. 15% of your Social Security. But if you put that Social Security in the bank, which it is because it's going to be debited into your bank account, they can take the whole thing. So ask your husband, how is he going to feel? How is he going to pay the bills if he doesn't address this problem? Because eventually they'll catch up with him. Now, there are cases where things do fall through the cracks, but that's not a very good strategy, particularly if there's a long time to run on the collection statute. Now, in about 10 to 15% of our cases, we can run out the statute, but those are cases where the liability is owed because Uncle Sam doesn't have forever to collect the tax. But doing nothing is normally not a good idea with the taxing authorities. So he needs to call me right away and tell him, once we get Texas stabilized, I'm coming to Miami, Florida. And Steve, didn't you say she lived in Fort Lauderdale?
Fort Lauderdale, right next.
I was there on freshman spring break, right when they opened Disney World. And I had an aunt and an uncle that we went to see that lived in Pompano Beach, Florida, which isn't far from Fort Lauderdale.
Lance, I got to tell you, I'm so glad you're going to be opening up an office here in Florida because we get so many letters from Tampa and Orlando and Boca Raton. In fact, I got one today from Boca Raton. So I'm so glad you're going to be opening up an office here in Florida.
It may be another year, it might be 2 years, but we're going to do it eventually, Steve.
So let's get back to, we're starting to get a lot of emails, people saying, how come you don't talk more about business rather than people who owe taxes? What do you find is the biggest problem that business, and you kind of alluded to it before in the opening, but what is the biggest problem that businesses, how do they get so far behind on their taxes? Lance?
Well, there's a number of reasons, I think, why, Steve. Number one, people are great at what they do, but they don't know how to run a business. And it's a lot of work. Everybody thinks having your own business is the American dream, but the paperwork, there is so much more paperwork. And they don't give you a class to take to learn what all that is before you set up your own business. The other thing that we see is, this happens to me, and people that are self-employed understand I'm going to collect my full fee before the case is resolved, because if I don't, I'm never going to get paid. And that happens to a lot of
Yes.
self-employed people. And so what happens is somebody goes belly up on them. They don't have enough money to pay Uncle Sam, but they want to keep the business going. So they pay their employees, they pay their suppliers, and then it just kind of snowballs. So that's the other thing that's going on there. And the other thing is a lot of self-employed people work long hours and they don't make a whole lot of money. Most small businesses do not make a lot of money. So they get home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And the last thing they want to do is sit down and do all the paperwork that's required. So, that's the biggest deal is that, like I said earlier, 70% or more of my clients are self-employed. Payroll tax is a big priority with the IRS. And if you're incorporated and you have a payroll tax liability, guess what? The IRS can come after you personally as well for the trust fund portion of that unpaid payroll tax, which is generally 50 to 60% of the total payroll tax. It's attributable to the employee. They consider that you're holding those funds in trust for the employee. And the significance of that then is they're not coming just after the business for their assets and their income. They're coming after you for your personal assets, your home, your bank account, your personal wages. And so this is why you have to tend to these problems. You can't put your head in the sand and think that it's going to go away.
Mark in Nashville wants to know, if the IRS takes my business away, how do they expect me to pay them?
Well, and that's sometimes the argument that we use for people is that, if you close them back up, but they're going to do that if you keep pyramiding liability. The worst thing and their highest priority at the IRS level is if you owe payroll tax and you can't get compliant and you're going to continue to incur more payroll tax, they just as soon have you shut down. And so then they'll just come after you for the trust fund portion, which I said is 50 to 60% of the total tax. But then your personal assets, your personal income are at risk. We had a case in Southern Illinois years ago, and this guy was doing a service in the healthcare area in terms of transportation. And they wanted to shut him down. He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I got him a great deal. And the way we did that was, he was the only one providing this service. So if they shut him down, all these people who needed these services, who were disabled and all that, would not be able to have those services. And the other thing, and they didn't like this argument, but I made it anyway, his problem was his contracts were with the state of Illinois. And guess what? The state of Illinois wouldn't always pay him what that contract said his fee was supposed to be. And most of the time they paid that fee late. So his tax liability was the IRS was due in large part to the state of Illinois not paying him on time. But the IRS really didn't care about that.
Robert in Atlanta, oh, this is a nice one. Robert in Atlanta said, I want to tell you I appreciate the time you give each month to educating us. I know you're busy, and it's nice that you take time out of your busy schedule. I know every case is different, but what is the average time it takes from the start to finish with the case for your firm?
Well, that's a great question because most people think we're going to get it done in 2 or 3 months. And years ago, the president of the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers said, you're not doing your client right if you're getting the case resolved in less than 9 months. And the IRS is so backlogged now, it's taken 9 months to a year because of the government shutdown. They are not scheduling collection due process hearings until this month. They're that far behind. They got behind in those things. Normally, you could have a hearing there in 3 to 4 months. If anybody doesn't know what a collection due process hearing is, it's when they send that final notice of intent to levy. You can stop the levy, have an appeals hearing by filing the proper legal paperwork. But of course, it's got to get assigned to a settlement officer. And because they're a bureaucracy, nothing happens overnight. But now it's taken 6 to 9 months for that to happen. So they are just, I've never seen the IRS this screwed up. It's just, they don't have enough people. They don't have enough people servicing my clientele, and it's just the new reality. It's just something we have to deal with. So I tell everybody, you're probably looking at a year from the time that you sign off on the engagement letter, because it takes 30 days for our power of attorney to process. In the old days, it took a week to 10 days. Now it's taking a month at a minimum for that power of attorney to process, because the first thing we do is we have special software that goes into the IRS systems. We do not want to call the IRS up, because that just puts you on their radar. They'll make unreasonable demands, give us unreasonable deadlines. So we have special software, goes all the way back to 1990. We'll see the whole chronology of your case. And we have to do that because when people tell us in the initial consult what their problem is, well, they're right about half the time. But the other half, it's only part of the problem, because the IRS makes this so confusing, so complicated for the average individual that they don't really understand everything that's going on.
Oh, here's a email from Norfolk, Virginia, Emily. She said, I read on Facebook your show is coming on. I'm so glad I found your show. What are the negatives if I try to negotiate with the IRS myself?
Well, here's the big one. And the reason I know this is people tell me this all the time. They think they can do this on their own. And so they'll call up the IRS. The IRS will set them up on a payment agreement. It's for every last dime, including penalties and interest. And then they'll call me. And the first words out of their mouth are, I can't afford the monthly payment. And then I go, then why did you agree to do this? And they go, this is because this is what the IRS said I had to do. That's not true. This is all based on your ability to pay it back. 85 to 90% of my clients never pay back the full amount. 10 to 15% never pay a dime. But you have to prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay this back. I got to tell you a horror story. I represented this guy. He owed $40,000 or more. I got him into currently non-collectible status. So that's a resolution. So then we revoked our power of attorney. Well, we told him in our closing letter that he would get yearly reminders that he owed the tax, but not to worry because the IRS was not coming after him. So he gets one of those letters. He panics. He doesn't call me. He calls the IRS. He agrees to pay back every last dime. And then he calls me. And I said, well, $40,000 plus, because he tried to do this on his own. And I see this all the time. I just had a guy, and we're representing his wife. He wouldn't make $1,000 a month estimated tax payments. He would have paid nothing. And then he said, okay, I don't need your services anymore, but we still represented the wife. Well, I couldn't have access to what was going on with his case, but it was joint liability. So we could see what was happening. The collection statutes were getting ready to run out. We're talking $60,000, $70,000. And guess what? He was paying the liability off a little at a time, because he doesn't do this every day like we do. And he didn't know those collection statutes were about to expire. So he was paying all that money back to the IRS when he didn't have to.
Lance, you just talked about how screwed things up are with the IRS. If you're a business and you're going to try to handle this yourself, see how long it takes you away from your business while you're on hold with the IRS. Whereas if you would have hired Lance's firm, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we could normally get through in 3 minutes. In the old days, I was like everybody else. I have special software. We'd have to wait 1 hour, 2 hours to get through. And so that's one of the reasons. And again, you don't have the knowledge that we possess because we do this every single day. You think you're going to save some money by doing it on your own, and normally it's just like trying to do your taxes on your own. You're going to end up spending more money in the long run.
I want to make sure I get this question in. This is from Robert in Atlanta. He said, I keep hearing about red flag. How does your account get a red flag from the IRS? I've never heard of the red flag.
Well, here's the thing. This is not really a farm. There's red flags with everything. It's a general term that applies to a lot of areas. So the one thing that we see that about is there are red flags that will generate an audit. And those two is that you don't report all your income. Somebody reports your income to them, but you don't report it. Or you have low income, or the other thing that is more prevalent is that you have high expenses. And so, if you have high expenses, you're going to automatically get targeted for an audit because the IRS is going to say, well, that's too big. We need to look into this to see if those expenses are legitimate or not. So that's really where it comes into play, is with you can get red flagged for an audit.
Lance, you've been doing this for so long, and I know people love your stories. So I hope you'll continue to share. I mean, we're not giving anybody's name out or anything, but I hope you'll continue because people, and you know what? I got to tell you, if you've got a relative or a friend that you know has got a tax problem, the best thing you can do for them as a friend is we're going to be giving you Lance's contact information. We're showing it. If you're watching on YouTube, we run it throughout the show, but we know so many of you listen on radio and on iHeart and Spotify who don't see the YouTube. Lance, how do people reach your office?
Well, go to lancedrurylaw.com. You'll see all kinds of useful information. You'll see all the testimonials from people, at least some of them anyway. You'll see the awards we've won, the speeches I've given across the country, the books I've co-authored. We're the real deal, Steve. And not only that, but you will get contact information there. There's all kinds of useful information there if you have questions about the IRS work. And, even if you're going to do it on your own, we do. And we tell you not to do it on your own. But if you're going to, we have an audio that helps you through that as well.
Well, listen, this is the greatest way to start off the new year. Lance is going to be back. We're due a Missouri and Tennessee show that's going to be coming up. And the last Friday of the month, we always do our Texas show. Lance, we are so lucky to have you. By the letters we get, people love hearing you. Must be cold there today, huh? You got some layered going on.
Well, it was 30 degrees for a high yesterday. I think it might get up to 50 today and for the next few days. So this is warm for January in Missouri. We get all 4 seasons here. But I got to tell you, Steve, I hate winter, and I'm afraid we're going to pay for this in March and April.
Oh, don't say that. Hey, we're going to be seeing you soon, Lance. I'm so glad we have you. God bless you, bro.
Thanks, Steve. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
That's attorney Lance Drury. It's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week again. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.